Welcome to this week's End of Days Update, coming to you from Middlebury, Connecticut. We had such a great time up in Springfield, a great time in Torrington. And if we're coming a day late to you because we had a bad snowstorm yesterday and everything got canceled, so I know that EDU's one day late. But if you're in Newtown, Connecticut, we'll be there this afternoon, Thursday afternoon, and then Wallingford Friday night. And then Sunday morning, we'll be in Willimantic, Connecticut, having a great time in New England. So good to be with you. We're coming to you every different week to show you the different things that point to the coming of the Lord, and specifically the gathering of nations for the Ezekiel 38 war. The rapture is signless, and the second coming has so many signs, but we see the setup for the Ezekiel 38 war, so we know we're very close to the coming of the Lord. So let's pick up with what's happened around Israel this last week. Quite a few things keep happening. Probably first of all, which is just amazing again, Israel took out another Iranian convoy in Quneitra, right on the border of Israel. Took out some Iranian arms, a depot there, and it's pretty crazy that it was so close to the border of Israel that Israel had to fire into there. And I love that Benjamin Netanyahu, he said, yeah, we did it. You know, in the past, last 2 years, they won't even come out and say they did it. They said it the day they did it, which is pretty wild, because remember, when Russia fired a missile into central Israel, Russia threatened that if Israel fires into Syria again, they would do that. They would fire missiles into central Israel. Israel went right back into Damascus and they're having to take out those convoys. So along with that, remember you have that new surface-to-surface missile that Iran is touting, and it is kind of disheartening that Israel and the U.S. said, we have no weaponry to defend against that because it stays so close to the ground under radar. So that's a deal breaker. So in the middle of this happening in Syria, you have Russia giving Hezbollah S-300 missile defense systems for Lebanon. I mean, it's just a huge deal. They didn't just turn them over to Lebanon or turn them over to Syria. They turned them over to Hezbollah in Lebanon. So that's a pretty big deal, because Israel's using the airspace of Lebanon to fly over to get to those places in Syria. But now you have those new missile defense systems that really will cause a little bit of a trouble there. It's just bizarre that that's even happening. You have a new thing coming out, remember, with President Trump's peace plan for the area, a two-state solution, so we'll see what happens there. You got tons of anti-Semitic stuff happening, even coming for our Congress. I'm looking to see some of those people censured. You even had one representative of Congress come out this last week saying that abortion's like having your tonsils taken out. Just crazy stuff happening right now. In the middle of all that, though, you had even Egypt helping Israel on the tunnels below the southern part of Gaza. They put poison in some of the tunnels and took some of the Palestinians out. And right now in Gaza, as we speak, they're gathering more momentum to look like they're going to cross the border into Israel. Now, it's kind of interesting to see them kind of have a renewal of that, because on the north, the Israeli Defense Forces came out saying that it looked like Iran and Syria were retreating a little bit to get ready for surface-to-surface missiles to be fired at Israel. So there's a bunch being said right now in the middle of Netanyahu meeting with Putin and different negotiations taking place, but in the middle of negotiations taking place, you got armies that are setting up for things. So pretty wild, because it's looking like closer and closer to the Ezekiel 38 war, to the point that even NATO came out yesterday saying, hey, Russia is messing up our GPS systems while we're having they were having basically exercises, military exercises, and Russia messed up their GPSs. Now that messes everything up, the flight of your missiles, the flight of so many things. So they talked about that. You had China come out again talking about war with Taiwan. So you got all the little players in place for what's going to happen right after the rapture of the church. So man, we're blessed. Remember, Jesus said you can tell what the weather is going to be, but you don't know your hour of visitation. So he wanted us to know. So that's why we get into these things, because he wants us to have a radical expectation and radical joy. Remember, Paul wrote these things to the church at Thessalonica so they'd be happy and hopeful. But let's go back to the scripture and look at what it says we'll always see. Number one, Israel made a nation. After that, Jerusalem won back. Jesus said, the generation that sees those two events will not pass away till all is fulfilled. But then you got the Hebrew language restored. You got the Ethiopian Jews brought back. You got the fertility of the land of Israel. You got the revival of the Roman Empire. You got the Temple Mount Institute. You have Ezekiel prophesied that you'd have fish in the Dead Sea. You got that. You got the red heifer born. Amazing. All these things that God said you'd see right before the coming of the Lord in our time. Pretty wild. So then you go even further. You got signals. You got blood red moons on Passover and Tabernacles. And you have that happening 4 in a row called a tetrad. Pretty amazing. Last time that happened was 1967 and 1948 when Israel was made a nation in 1492. That's pretty dramatic that you've gone from signs to signals of the coming of the Lord. Then you had the Bethlehem star. You don't get into that a lot, but then you had Mercury do a flyby of the sun. But the Bethlehem star was you had Jupiter, Regulus, and Venus come at the exact same time. So pretty crazy that the heavens are signaling Jesus is about to come back. And Mercury doing that flyby, it happens 5 times in a century, but the sun went down directly over the Temple Mount at sundown. The coordinates for the Temple Mount, planets formed a sickle, the moon formed a sickle. Orion changed its instrument to hammer. He had hammer and sickle on the same day. That's Russia's symbol. So how privileged are we to watch the earth get set up for all these things that would happen right before the return of Jesus? I hear people say, well, you can't tell when the Lord's coming back. Well, actually, there's more verses written about what it would look like right before He comes back. I had a guy say to me one time, well, Joe, if you preach on the coming of the Lord, just get everybody's hopes up. That's exactly right. The whole purpose of this is to accelerate because we have such great hope and great joy. We have great strength. So we have to go for it. If you can see all these things about the finish line, it makes you run faster, not slower. So what do? We help our local church, help our local pastor, get the message out. Jesus is coming so soon. We don't fit church into our life. It is our life. So Colleen and I want to thank you for joining us this week. Sorry we're a day late. Next week we'll try to get back on schedule. We were in the snowstorm up here in New England. But man, we're about to see Jesus face to face. Let's make every year count. Let's make this season count right before we're raptured to do the will of God. Soon we'll see Him face to face. Eyes as a flame of fire, feet like undefined brass. Have a blessed, awesome week. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for joining us today at the End of Days Update. If you'd like to be notified every time there's a new post, just go to the EDU at josephmorris.com and subscribe to receive email alerts. If these posts and updates have been a blessing to you, please consider making a one-time donation to help get the message out or even becoming a monthly partner with Joseph Morris Ministries. Thanks again for tuning in to the EDU, and we'll see you next week.